Hello and welcome to Homegrown KC, a podcast dedicated to exploring Kansas City's fascinating history and sharing stories from a church past. I'm your host, Laura. Joining me today is Amy Loch, the director of the Wyandotte County Historical Society and Museum. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you could join us. So why don't you tell us about yourself to start with?
My name's Amy Loch, and I'm the director here at the Wyandotte County Museum. I've been here for about 2 years, and I've been in the museum field about 20 years now. I have my master's degree in public history, and I love working with local history museums and helping better tell the county's histories.
Awesome. Same here. How did you get into history originally?
I was always a history nerd from a little kid. When I was little, I thought the artifacts or antiques in my parents' house were toys. So it made sense that as I grew up, I went into history. I worked at a living history museum for a while where I actually got to use some of those items I played with as a kid. And I've really evolved through the field in multiple roles.
And where is it that you studied?
I'm originally from Pennsylvania. So my undergrad's from Immaculata University, and then my graduate degree was from Indiana University of Pennsylvania.
Okay. Have you, let me try this again. You already said that you have worked at other places. So what are some of the other jobs you've had?
I've had a real diverse background in museums. The first job I ever had was at a railroad museum. Then I was at the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum down in Maryland, working with their collections. I also worked briefly at George Washington at Valley Forge in Pennsylvania. I worked at a coal mining museum. I worked at several local history museums in Oklahoma and Kansas. I was at the Old Cowtown Museum in Wichita for about 6 years, where we primarily focused on living history at that site. And most recently, before I came here, I was the director of the Stillwater Museum in Oklahoma.
Wow, you really have done a lot of different things.
It sounds like I jump around a lot, but really I go wherever the interesting history is at that moment. And other things have, driven me as well.
Yeah, I understand that. So tell us a little bit about the Wyandotte County Museum.
This is a fabulous museum here. I think Wyandotte County has really diverse history. And this is one of the few museums that I've worked at where we actually start really, really early. In this case, we actually tell the story of the Kansas City Hopewell. So we go all the way back to 1 AD, telling their story. Then we tell the stories of more recent tribal history. And now we're working on our new modern history gallery that will start from the railroads and go all the way up to 2000. So the diversity of the stories we tell here is so huge. And right now, our new gallery project that we're working on will really focus on the diversity of the county, people's backgrounds, immigration, industry, as well as culture, and just great things that people remember.
That does sound really diverse. So we'll come back around to the more modern stuff, but tell me about the Hopewell stuff that you guys have, the artifacts and the exhibits.
So this is really, really fascinating history. Our museum is essentially originally founded by a man named Harry Trowbridge. And in the 1930s, he was digging in his backyard and essentially accidentally discovered that the Hopewell actually came this far west. And at that time, there was lots of amateur archaeologists, who dig things up and collect things, but he kept incredibly detailed records. His records are so meticulous, and eventually these collections largely went to us, but there are some pieces at the Smithsonian. I believe there's some pieces at the University of Kansas, and his collection came with a trust to essentially establish that gallery in the museum. So we're able to really share his stories and his collections, and it's just a fascinating collection. If you haven't been here to see it, you really should come see it.
So was he an archaeologist or he was just randomly digging in his backyard?
Essentially, he started as randomly digging in his backyard and really became essentially an untrained archaeologist. And at that time period, people just didn't keep records the way he did.
Right. So, what other Native American exhibits and artifacts do y'all have?
So we have a little bit from the Kanza and the Shawnee. We do have more from the Delaware and the Wyandotte tribes. And we do have good relationships with both the Wyandotte and Delaware tribes of both Kansas and Oklahoma, where they've done some programming for us in the past. And we have a number of objects pertaining to their history in our galleries.
Oh, that's cool. See, that was going to be my next question: is do you have a relationship with them?
We do, and right before the world changed, we did have the Delaware out to do a program talking about their heritage. We had a great turnout for that, and we're hoping to do some more of them in the future.
That would be awesome. And what other artifacts and exhibits do you have besides Native American?
So right now we have the two big Native American galleries, and then our modern gallery that I mentioned a little bit that we're changing out. Right now we have some township history in there. We have a lot about the fire department, including a 1903 horse-drawn fire pumper that's on display.
Oh, those are so cool. I love those.
Yeah, it's a really great piece. We also have a military display. Some of my interns from KU actually helped change that out last year. So we have some new pieces on display in that area, as well as just some other pieces from the county's history. We also have an architecture exhibit up in our rotating gallery that's just highlighting features of historic buildings in the county that people may not notice. So our curator really zoomed in to show a lot of the stonework, engravings, things like that on buildings that people may not necessarily notice. So that'll be up until probably March of this year. And then we also have a pop-up exhibit outside called The Art of Voting through Humanities Kansas. And that's kind of a great little way for people to be able to come see something at the museum without having to even come inside, so you can stay socially distanced. And that actually, there's 6 of those around the state right now. So we were fortunate enough to get that exhibit as well.
Okay, so that's not an exhibit you put together.
No, that was actually a grant. It was actually put together by the Watkins Museum in Lawrence, and then Humanities Kansas helped recreate that. So it's at 6 different institutions across the state right now.
Okay, I see. And what does this exhibit look like? What story does it tell?
So the one outside is called The Art of Voting, and it's just focused a little bit on the 15th Amendment and voting rights and how they've changed. There's some about kind of art pieces and how people have, interpreted voting and things. And then there's even some audiovisual components of that as well. So there's some QR codes that people can use their phone and download some more history. And there's a brochure that links to websites and things like that too.
Okay. Well, let's circle back around to the modern. What stuff is it that you're putting into it that's going to be new?
So I'm really excited about this. We're actually planning it in 3 different phases. So we're hoping to get phase 1 open by this summer. And we're starting with one of our grantors for this exhibit is the Union Pacific. So we're going to focus on the railroad and how it helped bring people to the county and shape the county. So we are going to start with a little bit of the railroad stories, which railroads came, where they set up, how communities set up along those same lines. Then we're going to talk about industries that followed the railroads, meatpacking industry, soap making, a lot of things that people that grew up here had family members that worked in those industries. And then we're really going to focus on immigration and where people came from to Wyandotte County. We have such a diverse population here that we are going to touch on European immigration from a wide range of countries, African American migration, and various ways that the African American community arrived here, as well as the Hispanic population. And combined, mean, we really have no ethnic majority in this particular county. Right now, I believe we're at about 29% Hispanic and 24% African American, I believe. So
Okay.
really important that, we're trying to include everybody's stories of how their ancestors got here, um, which is our main focus with this exhibit. And then the final section that will be included, we'll be talking about the small and rural communities, most of which have been annexed into Kansas City, Kansas over time. But
Mm-hmm.
all of those communities had separate identities, and people still identify with those individual identities of those communities. So we're going to be highlighting a number of those as well.
Those sound awesome. I'm really looking forward to them.
We are super excited, and we have some great pieces in our collection that have never been on display before, with stories that connect to our county's residents that we're able to highlight with this exhibit.
For the ones about the individual communities, are you working with those communities to get oral histories or anything like that?
At this point, we are not, just specifically because of the time restraints of getting this phase done. As we move into phases 2 and 3 of this exhibit, we are going to start doing more oral histories. We're actually bringing on Avista. His job is specifically going to be community outreach and helping collect more stories. So especially when we start telling the more modern history, where we have lots of people we can still talk to, we'll have the oral history piece for those parts of the exhibit. So our phase 1 is really stopping about 1920. So
Mm-hmm.
we're just at the point now where we're starting to work on the pieces where there's still people around to help tell those stories better.
Okay, yeah. So you have a really diverse collection. Sounds like one of the most diverse that I've heard of. Do you have a favorite piece?
Oh, that's a tough question. Actually, I think I do, and I just discovered it. So I found this thing in collections, and it kind of looked like a clock, but it clearly was not a clock because it only had 4 numbers on it.
Okay.
And I was looking at it going, what is it? I had never seen anything like it before. So I did some digging and figured out that essentially this was an intercom from the Bethel train depot. And there was a bell in each of the rooms, and essentially whichever bell would ring one of these numbers.
Okay.
I just never seen anything like it, and I'm kind of a technology nerd, so currently it's
I've never heard of anything like that.
neither had I. And I just love the things that people look at and have no idea what they are or what they did, and then when we realize we actually know where it was used and what it did.
Those pieces are so fascinating. Yeah, when you're like, this is, I don't know, and then it turns out to be the best thing.
Yeah, those are by far my favorites.
Do you have other favorites?
Oh, that's such a tough question. So we also recently collected, my curator, David Hartman, has been working on this for years. He's been trying to track down one of the steam whistles. So we had a steam whistle on the Armor Packing Plant Company that everybody that grew up in the area remembers. The 9 p.m. whistle was the curfew whistle. When that whistle went off, kids went flying to get home. And he's been trying to track this whistle down for years. And he finally thought we had the whistle, and it turns out the one we found was actually from the Quindaro power plant, but it served a very similar function. And since they were closing down that part of their BPU, they were willing to share it with us. So we now have it in our lobby, and it will be going into our new exhibit as well. And it's just something, who's ever seen a steam whistle? Even if people have heard a steam whistle, nobody knows what they look like.
That is so cool on so many levels. First off, in my first series, I did 2 episodes on the meat packing plants, and I talked about that steam whistle.
Oh, cool.
Oh, I love it when stuff connects like that. That is really cool. So, you don't have to answer this because some people prefer not to, but do you have a least favorite item in your collection?
least favorite items. I have a general least favorite items. That's grammatically incorrect, but the items that drive me crazy are the items that their story has become lost. I just
Okay.
think when there's something that's really cool that I'm sure there was an awesome story that went with it once upon a time, and that story never made it to the museum or it became separated from that story, it just frustrates me to no end when I believe there's a great story and I just can't find it.
Having already said that you like the interesting objects because they have the unique stories, that makes perfect sense. Now, I understand that the museum takes care of several cemeteries. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. Well, we don't actually take care of them, but we take care of the records
Okay.
for the cemeteries. The Parks Department actually maintains them, but we have all the historic records, and if there's still families that own plots that need to do burials, we coordinate that with the funeral homes as well.
Okay. Is that something that in the other jobs that you've had, or maybe coworkers or other people you know, is that common that a
No,
historical society museum would have these records and be so involved?
this is by far the first time I've ever encountered this, and I've been asking other people, and I found one other museum that sort of kind of was connected to a cemetery, and it was for other reasons. So it's pretty unusual. And in our case, we actually have the records for 16 different cemeteries.
That's a lot, but that's not even all of them in Wyandotte County, is it?
No, it is not. So we just have records for cemeteries that were either abandoned and nobody was taking care of them anymore, or they were just closed because there was no longer any space. And just like any other business, if there's nobody being buried, there's no money coming in to the cemetery. So those are the records that we have, are the non-active cemeteries, essentially.
Okay. And you said that the Parks Department is the one that actually physically cares for them. Do you know what that entails?
So really, it's just a matter of mowing. So they have contracts with the mowers and weed whacking and things like that. Unfortunately, because these are old cemeteries, there's not a whole lot of other maintenance that goes on. They do have to clean up some trees and things. We've had some great Boy Scout troops that have done some just basic cleanup projects, helping stones that have become buried or shifted a little bit, things like that.
I've heard of similar projects, cleanup projects back in Tennessee.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the older a cemetery gets, the more issues there are with the stones in it.
What sort of programs does your museum have?
So we're kind of at a redevelopment point for programming. So my board has historically done quarterly lectures. So that's something that we're clearly going to continue doing. We also bring in school children when we're able to, and we have some traveling trunks that we just finished up that we're hoping, when we can eventually go out and take history to classrooms, because not everybody can come to us. I also like doing monthly activities, just so there's something that's family friendly to draw more people in for some kind of activity is something we're looking at in the future. And then we started doing right now they're self-guided cemetery tours, but we're looking at other options for tours in the future, whether it's architecture tours or, any possibilities really.
The architecture tour will be interesting. I meant to comment earlier when you said that you had an exhibit on that. It really does seem to be overlooked a lot of the time.
It does. And in Wyandotte County's case, I mean, there's not a whole lot of buildings left, and the ones that are left are really pretty cool, and we want people to appreciate them.
And you mentioned a traveling trunk. For those who are not in the field, can you explain what a traveling trunk is?
Yes, so essentially it's just a program in a box that allows us to go into a school or summer program or things like that and be able to take a a traveling version of our programs with. So the two we have put together that are ready to go right now are the story of Junius Grove, the Potato King. And he was an African-American man who was born as a slave and went on to be one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. Hence getting the name the Potato King, because clearly that's where he made most of his money. There was a children's book written about him a number of years ago. So we have the children's book along with a number of activities is one story we can take and share with children in the community. The other one we have right now is 100-Year Trunk, which is just comparing life 100 years ago to today. And there's a number.
Well, I bet that one's popular with the kids.
We're hoping it will be as soon as we're allowed to do it.
Right. COVID has messed everything up.
So we do actually have right now, we have virtual versions of those trunks. So, I mean, teachers could download and use pieces of those programs right now. But we're certainly looking forward to being able to actually take them out into the community and then growing those programs over time with other content, as well as our adult programs. We did do some for community centers and seniors living environments before, and we're looking to expand that and take more programs out into the community for people that, just have a hard time getting to us, so they can enjoy our history too.
Yeah, that's great. No one ever thinks about the folks in the seniors' homes.
Yeah, and I mean, they're an audience that, I mean, they're looking for things to do too, and a lot of times it's easier to go to them.
Yeah. And you are the director of the museum. What does that entail?
For a small museum, it entails many hats. So I do the administration functions of the museum. I coordinate volunteers and internships. Because I have a curatorial background, I do play a role in that area of the museum as well as helping with programs. Pretty much, I'm involved in all facets of the museum.
Okay, yeah. Are you looking for any volunteers or interns right now? Or, again, because of COVID, is everything kind of on the wait and see side?
So actually, because of COVID, we have a number of interns and volunteers that it's really hard for students, especially, to find museums to get their internships in. So unfortunately, at this point, I have all that I can handle for the spring semester because of social distancing. But we are certainly always interested to talk to more people that are interested in internships, volunteering, especially for the summer and beyond at this point. And I love working with students as well as volunteers of all ages.
Well, I'm glad that you have all that you need for now. But hey, listeners, if you need something to do for the summer, you know who to talk to now.
We love to have you.
I'm not thinking of anything else that I had in mind to ask you about. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the museum?
I think the most important thing is if you have not visited us, please do. We are open to the public Monday through Saturday, 9 to 4. We're always free. And if you haven't been in here a while, we're always changing things out. So please come back often.
Okay, well, if you're always free, that does actually give me a couple other ideas for questions. Do you have any major fundraisers that you do throughout the year?
At this point, we don't really. We are fortunate enough that we do have some trusts that fund a lot of our programming. And then we're also, I'm a UG employee, so the unified government is nice enough to pay our salaries as well as the utilities on the building. So we do fundraisers from time to time for specific projects, but at this moment, especially with COVID, we're just happy to be in the position we are.
Yeah. What was that back in, I think even as early as spring last year, there was talk of museums closing and possibly permanently closing because of COVID.
Yes, there's a lot of museums that have been severely impacted that have not reopened. That as a field, we're all really worried about long term what this is going to do to a number of museums. I feel incredibly fortunate in my position that we haven't been more impacted by the situation.
Yeah, with a trust and the city taking care of you, you're in a good position financially.
Yes, we're very fortunate here.
All right, well, I think that's it then. If anyone wants to look up the museum for more information, where can they go?
So our website is connected to the Unified Government's website, so it's WYCO, and then you just search for the museum. But our Facebook page is WYCO Museum, and we're always sharing great historical photos there. And we've just passed our 5,000 follower, so we're thrilled that that's still growing, and we'd love to have more people follow us and check out our historic pictures there.
Congrats. That's cool. All right, well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I will admit now what I was slightly afraid to do so before. I have not been to this museum, but I'm going to very soon. It sounds very cool. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, rate and review on Apple Podcasts, and make sure that's a 5-star rating, okay, guys? Also, follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter. Thank you for supporting the show. Also, thanks goes out to Sarah McCombs for the creation of my logo, to the Dear Misses for the use of their song Kansas City as the intro and outro music of the show, and to local libraries without whom I could not do my research. One last special thank you to Amy for joining us today. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Seem to shake this feeling, and I can't seem to get you off my mind. Thought I lost my nerve forever, and I know that it's now or never to try and see this through. Tie loose ends up with a bow and start anew. We could talk through the nights on the phone, but we toss and we turn all alone, and we both know that that's not the way we roll. Can you hear me calling out your name? 'Cause I swear I thought I'd heard the same. So don't overthink or undermine. Meet me in Kansas City tonight. Your grievance, not a motive for your